Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Software Plaza podcast. I'm Twain Taylor, editor at Software Plaza, and we talk each week to builders, to experts, to influencers who are doing things in the space of cloud computing, AI, and DevOps. And we're going to be talking about today something that's really hot right now. We're talking about agentic AI, something that's probably been on your mind, especially if you attended any recent conference. You can't miss that term. So it's all the rage right now, agentic AI. And we're going to be talking to one of the startups in that space called Tray.ai. That is Tray.ai. That's their website if you want to check them out. And joining us today, we have Alistair Russell. He's the CTO at Tray. So quite excited to talk to him about what he's building with his team and just what it can do for you and your business. So that's a topic for today. Let's get started. Alistair, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Twain. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. To get us started, Alistair, tell us a bit about yourself and just your journey so far, things you've done in the past, and what led you to Tray and this space of automating businesses processes with AI agents.
Sure. So I mean, I'm the CTO and one of the founders of Tray.ai. We've been doing it for probably over a decade now. So the idea of us being a startup
Wow.
is still sort of it's kind of one of those funny things where it's like at what point do you stop becoming you stop being a startup? But sure. I mean, it's funny because I feel like my journey in many ways over the last 20 years has kind of prepared me for where we are now as both as a sort of a company, but also I think the sort of technology space as well. So
Mhm.
I did my master's in computer science in Southampton in the UK. I graduated about just over 20 years ago now, and I then spent a few years working as part of the Web Science Research Initiative, which was led by Tim Berners-Lee, the creator of the web,
Oh, wow.
and it
Wow.
was sort of collaborated between MIT and Southampton, and I was really focusing on the semantic web. And the goal of the semantic web, and Tim Berners-Lee's vision was really to create a web of data that computers could better understand. The web that he'd created had obviously evolved and had sort of it had grown way beyond what he imagined it would be, but it was very unstructured. It was lots of sort of blog posts here and things like that, and his vision was to try and make it more semantically relevant for sort of computers to be able to do things. But it was very hard work. That getting people to agree and adopt standards that he was trying to create was tough. And funnily enough, the rise of the API economy was a more organic version of that sort of accessibility of data, making sure that data that was being created in all these sort of websites and services was more accessible. um, and large language models are actually kind of taking that a step further. That we've gone from trying to make sort of data accessible and trying to encode like sort of semantics into the data, to being able to kind of train large language models on a huge amount of language, and sort of it's sort of given that semantic understanding of it more naturally, if you will. So that's kind of where I started, and I've always had an interest in human computer interaction as well. So I was kind of bridging, the semantic web and building kind of interfaces that enable people to interact with those sort of technologies. I did that
Mhm.
for a few years, and then I was doing conferences and papers and things like that. And yeah, I think that led to where we are now with Tray, which is a sort of a natural segue. Is like automation, APIs, building a sort of a low code interface to give make people give people more accessibility to the sort of more complex technologies of software and APIs. And now in the agent space, as we've started to sort of see in the last few years, it's taking on an even sort of higher level, I suppose.
All right. All right. Wow, that's quite a story. So let me get this. You're out of college and you get to work with Tim Berners-Lee.
Yeah, it was certainly quite. It was very weird. I mean, I went to MIT a few times and spent a month or so there, just sort of collaborating with his team, and it was very surreal. It was one of those things that sort of growing up, I suppose I never imagined that would happen, but it did.
Amazing. Wow. So, and also surprising that you mentioned Tray.ai has been around for 10 or so years.
Yeah.
Wow, that's surprising. So I'm guessing there's been an evolution even in like product and focus and all of that.
Yeah,
Kind of,
absolutely.
yeah, sketch that out for us. What was some of the previous focus areas and how has it changed now?
So Tray has always been a kind of an AI ready iPaaS. We started in more sort of traditional automation and moved into sort of more traditional kind of data integration, ETL, things like that. It was a natural evolution from what I was doing personally, and what my sort of co-founders and were also doing at the time. We were trying to solve problems that we had, and one of the things my CEO Rich Waldron, I've known him for 20 plus years, and he's an engineer. He did business and IT and engineering, and he can write code. But at the time when we started the company, we were doing something slightly different, more to do with email. And he was writing all these scripts and trying to sort of we were hacking away as a sort of an early startup. And I think it was at that point that we realized that actually some of the stuff we'd been building, which was connectivity to different APIs, and sort of some interfaces for sort of building things, and some of the stuff I'd done as a researcher at my university, had essentially, was perfect to enable him to build stuff. So that early kind of automation idea, he could basically use low code rather than having to write all these scripts, and we could take care of the sort of hosting and scalability and all those sort of aspects. And he could sort of get ahead much quicker. Basically, that was the sort of the goal. And so Trey started off as sort of more traditional automation and ended up moving sort of more into sort of integration, ETL. And then with the rise of AI, we saw the sort of the future. We saw that AI was going to completely disrupt iPaaS, was going to completely disrupt the sort of stuff we'd been building, and we needed to get ahead of it. So we were a very early mover, especially in the agentic space a couple of years ago, sort of to really sort of shore up the future of the company.
All right, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, fascinating journey there, from automation to just AI. Seems like you guys were ahead of the curve in that sense. But what's changed? What were some of the big things you got to realize in recent times with the rise of AI and this term agentic AI that's come on the scene over the past few months or maybe a year or so? Tell us about some of the new things that have caught your attention in this whole AI movement.
I think it was certainly the large language models. I mean, we've been using sort of AI and machine learning in various different forms for many years. Things like trying to predict the next step in a low code workflow, or sort of do sort of automated data mapping using machine learning, trying to sort of understand. But I think the large language models represented a huge step change in sort of in AI itself, and also the adoption of it, and the awareness. It started off obviously, quite rightly as, oh, this is great. We can sort of use natural language to describe things, and the computer's going to be able to understand it. But actually, it is about that shared language. It's about shared understanding of concepts and things like that. And the way that it's being used is obviously, I think, far ahead of the vision of this sort of the early, sort of Google engineers who wrote that sort of transformer paper. So I think that the big change was this model that could do kind of anything. Had so much knowledge. It has the same sort of understanding as sort of 1,000 different sort of uh, graduates in different areas. It understands law, it understands engineering, it understands sort of marketing, and there's lots of things. It might not be an expert in one particular thing, and it might not necessarily have sort of experience in the real world. But if you can harness that kind of understanding, that education that the large language models had in the right way, that was going to change the world. And that's what we saw. We sort of saw the large language models, this incredible brain, but without the ability to do things. And that's where Trey came in and was we gave it the ability to take action. We gave it that sort of the body, the arms, the ability to actually do things with the sort of the information and the education that it had.
All right, all right. So let's talk a bit about just agentic AI and just kind of define it. Because with the different kinds of ways that AI is being used, and probably the most common one that people know of is chatbots. But agentic AI is different from a chatbot. Could you tell us some of the differences and define for us what is agentic AI?
Absolutely. So, as I was just sort of mentioning before, the rise of the large language models and this sort of idea of a common kind of shared language, between sort of humans and computers was key to that. And I think the transformer model, sort of transformer kind of framework that was originally kind of built in the early GPTs, were really about sort of translation. So the idea of translating between different languages, and it applied itself to natural language generation, but also natural language understanding. So it made sense that the first, the early movers was all about sort of chatbots, like having a natural conversation with someone, and you got a lot of information, a lot of sort of knowledge, and you could ask questions and get answers back. But agentic systems, I think, as we sort of started to call them early on, like processes that had infused kind of large language models and AI, were more about sort of trying to do something with that information. So being able to kind of take that, take that sort of natural language description and convert it into something more kind of real. So we were one of the sort of first, we're definitely the first iPaaS to launch kind of a co-pilot or assistant in Merlin agent builder. Sorry, no, Merlin build over 2 years ago now. And that was obviously taking natural language descriptions. You could have a conversation with the agent, and it could build workflows for you. So that was sort of the early kind of evolution of Tray and certainly Merlin. But in terms of agentic AI and true agents, what is a true agent? I think a true agent is really a process, an intelligent process that can adapt and take action more than anything. I think that's the key thing. Like chatbots, when you're having a conversation with a large language model, it has good answers for things, but then a lot of the time you have to then go and do something. It can tell you how to do something, but it won't do it for you. And that's the difference with agents. Agents have both the knowledge, but also the ability to take action. And traditional chat experiences in the past, even before, even pre-AI, were very rules based. They were very static. They could follow a certain path. They could dynamically adapt a little bit to some of the language that would come into them, but really they were sort of fixed. Whereas agents really are dynamic. You can give them a set of low level tools, and they can use their knowledge and understanding of different areas and different domains to take multiple actions and to solve tasks, pretty complex tasks actually, and sort of for on behalf of the user basically.
Interesting. Yeah, so you defined it for us really well about how agents are dynamic. They can take action. They have seems like context. But could you crystallize it for us in giving us some examples of what's typical or some of the most common agentic AI workflows that you see, and that kind of explains these things that you were mentioning just now in your definition?
Absolutely. I mean, agents, they bring the best of automation to kind of very adaptable, intelligent processes. So, and the sort of things that you could automate before, you can use AI to automate on the fly more dynamically without having to do a lot of the sort of the upfront work. Like I said, automation before is similar to sort of the rules-based systems where you'd have to pre-build kind of processes that would handle lots of different variation. So agents certainly give you that sort of dynamic kind of ability. But I mean, we see a lot of work, especially in our customer base. IT generally owns the iPaaS platforms. And we see a lot of IT teams automating sort of IT service management. That's a very classic case. IT teams tend to be very under-resourced in comparison to the rest of the business, especially fast-growing companies. So, we have customers that are using agents to deflect, 70% of their tickets that come in from the business, because, there's quite often a lot of repetition, common issues. And I think that's another part of the agentic sort of, Merlin Agent Builder, which is the platform we offer as well, is about getting the right data in at the right time. So the agent also has the right context. You see it quite in every business has like an IT support channel, and people will quite commonly come in and start, sort of posting about issues they're having with certain software, certain sort of login problems and things like that. And quite often the same thing gets asked over and over again. So if you give the agent the context of that channel, where people ask questions, context of previous IT support tickets, it can use that to, deflect a huge number of tickets already. And then if you start to give the agent the ability to take action, for it to be able to do things like provision, application access in your IDP, so you've got Okta or OneLogin or a platform like that, you can have company policies around who has access to what. Whether you're an engineer, you automatically get access to GitHub. Maybe everyone has access to DocuSign, for example, and you can automate the provisioning of that. You can automate the provisioning of things like, resetting your multi-factor authentication, automating the approval of that. We have a process internally at Tray actually that where, if someone wants to reset their multi-factor authentication in Okta, they have to record a video of themselves and
Mhm.
send it to IT, and the IT will then send it to their manager to approve. And basically, we can do that automatically. Like, we can take out the sort of the middleman and basically just sort of make sure that happens, and still adhere to the company's policies and keep that sort of security in place, but make it much easier. In terms
Okay.
of other areas such as, I know obviously, you're very interested in the sort of DevOps space. I think there's some great examples there as well. Giving the agent a few low-level tools can have a huge impact. We actually use agents to do things like rapidly provision new environments across our infrastructure. So taking some of our kind of Terraform configuration files and producing new ones. So someone wants to spin up a sort of a demo sort of environment for a particular customer, or a particular environment for sort of the engineers to start sort of testing in, they can quite easily do that using an agent, or even reacting to anomalies. We've started to do that. We actually have an anomaly detection feature coming up within the Tray platform, which can basically sort of react to anomalies and then go and try and fix the workflows that you have, or go and fix code and fix software.
All right, those are some great examples there. And I can see how you kind of take processes that are already existing and that work and then automate them, even if they're really complex, involving things like video and all of that, across multiple tools. So yeah, you really clarified there how this works. I'm wondering, so if I'm running like an organization or team and I'm thinking of automating, and I'm, w- with the organizations that come to Tray, when do they actually feel the need for something like agentic AI? Is it like, our systems and processes are just too slow, and we need to quicken them. We're running behind. Our competitors are faster, or we need to, they feel that pain, and so they think, okay, agentic AI can help us with this. Or are they more like, yeah, we think our processes and everything are fine. We don't really have major complaints, but I'm just curious to see what agentic AI can actually do, because everyone's talking about it. What kind of customers do you see coming to you more often?
It's a good question. So I think it's sort of somewhere in the middle of those 2 points you made. Actually, I think that
Mhm.
we have customers that that probably think their processes are already okay. Maybe they're automating some processes already, but they're curious about what agentic AI can do for them. And then there are some customers who are obviously aware already of processes that they think just aren't working, that they need to improve. They're sort of feeling the heat from a competition perspective. But so I think it's somewhere in the middle, where it's a bit of both. And I think everyone is aware of AI, the sort of the changes, the moves. Even sort of more kind of traditional companies, not necessarily sort of tech companies, are also aware of that. We've got customers like sort of FedEx, for example, who are trying to adopt AI internally as well. And I think that the real sort of turning point is when they realize what it can do for them. I think everyone's aware, and everyone's aware that it could help them, but when they come to us, in a lot of cases, they've either got a good idea of what they want to do. They realize that they can build an agent. It can help with certain areas. It can help sort of ITSM, deflect support tickets and things like that. But when they start to see the real possibilities, that's when I think there's kind of an aha moment, and they start to realize that they could roll this out across the business. And actually, funnily enough, that's where some of the sort of I suppose kind of governance and security issues come in, because if you think about rolling agents across the business, you want to encourage more and more people to build agents across the business to solve their problems. Then you get into a state of, okay, there's this sort of network of agents that are starting to spin up, and how do you sort of monitor it and observe it, and make sure it's secure, which is a key part of certainly what we do, and I think what is the most sort of important thing to think about when you're building agentic systems.
All right. Yeah, tell us more about it. Definitely curious to hear more about the security and governance part. What's your approach? How do you make sure that agentic AI is secure and governed?
Well, so as I mentioned earlier, kind of Tray's an iPaaS platform at its core. We've been doing that for 10 years, and the problems that exist with iPaaS, with enabling sort of people like IT teams and other sort of departments in the company to automate processes themselves. And the same problems exist with agentic AI. Giving power to sort of other autonomous processes, or giving power to other people to sort of create things, exist in both sort of spaces. So we've been sort of tackling this problem for 10 years. So I think the initial concern with large language models was about sort of sensitive data leaking into to being trained in large language models. But with agents, the risks are sort of more things like letting agents make decisions and perform actions on your behalf. So you need to ensure that every agent is given the right level of access. You need to think about the sort of principle of least privilege, making sure that you have the right sort of role-based access in place for your different systems, that you can ensure that the agent is acting on behalf of the specific user who has that level of access. And then ensuring that you have monitoring and observability, being able to sort of see what's going on, trace where things happen, add human in the loop approvals where the most important sort of processes are. And that's pretty much the sort of approach that we take ourselves internally, but also the approach that we're telling our customers to take.
All right, neat. Yeah, sounds great. So getting into the solution you built, Merlin is the name you given to it. So tell us about Merlin, and just, I'm sure you've built it from the ground up and working closely with it. Tell us a bit about its approach, the approach you've taken with Merlin, and what makes it unique with its approach to agentic AI.
So we've been building the Tray platform for like I said 10 years, and we set out to build a flexible kind of low code platform for building software, essentially, building kind of software that lives in the cloud, that can connect to different systems, that takes care of authentication and refreshing tokens, and the monitoring and observability. We've spent a lot of time thinking about scalability as well, and it really lent itself to sort of this move into the agentic world. We always wanted to strike a balance between the sort of the control and flexibility of our platform. So you have a lot of control, sort of to make sure that things are going the right way. You're ensuring that there is security and governance baked into everything you do, but also the flexibility to build things that maybe we hadn't thought of, as sort of an engineering team building into the products. And that's pretty much how we started building the Merlin agent builder. Actually, that sort of was built on top of the platform. We have an API management offering that allows you to build APIs, and you can build obviously low code workflows. You can connect to different systems. And the first version of Merlin Agent Builder, which we sort of started prototyping a couple of years ago, was actually a low-code workflow connecting to large language models, and using the large language model as that sort of cognitive kind of intelligent architecture, and then our connectors as the sort of the actions, the ability to take actions. And it was kind of like building it in that way, building on top of the platform. And we've continued to sort of iterate on that. So Merlin Agent Builder now is actually bringing together all of the things you need to build agents into a sort of a single place. So like I said, the monitoring and observability, understanding, being able to debug the agents, understanding what's going on, the sort of the reasoning and action sort of architecture that our agents have. You can see why it took an action, why how it reasoned over the sort of the context it has, why it decided to take an action, what the sort of the response of that action was. So if it goes and creates a record in Salesforce, or goes and starts sort of a deployment in your CI/CD platform, for example, you can see what the response is, and you can see how the agent kind of iterates and will sort of keep on doing until it's keep on iterating until it's finished that task, and then making sure that there is the sort of the observability and monitoring there. So you can see the downstream effects. You can go and see the sort of the connectors that happen. You can see which authentications were used. You can see who had access to it, who kicked it off, and things like that. So there's a lot of things that we built foundationally within the platform that really lent itself to agents. I think one of the biggest things, actually, one of the biggest advantages that we've had as a platform is, when we first architected the platform, we built it as a kind of a distributed messaging architecture. So the idea is, we don't, if you think about a workflow, a number of steps that do things, pull some data from Salesforce, maybe transform it, go and push it somewhere else. We didn't, even though we sort of, we're building the platform during the rise of containerization like Docker, we didn't sort of go down the route of trying to say, okay, well, we've got a single workflow that we're going to bundle up in a container and it's going to run inside that container. We built it as a sort of a distributed serverless system. So the idea is each kind of step, each kind of action or connector that gets executed as a serverless function in isolation, and we have sort of a kind of a step execution service, which will basically be a middleman trying to sort of figure out what the next state is, and then calling the connector, getting the response back, updating the state, and doing that. And what this means is that you don't have to provision any resources. You can pretty much get started straight away. As soon as you start building workflow, it's there and ready. You don't have to spin it up, you don't have to deploy it, you don't have to sort of do any sort of building of the sort of the assets and things like that. And in the AI world, that's actually incredibly important. With large language models are known for being fairly slow with responses, especially when you're generating a large amount of response tokens. And being able to having systems waiting around for that process to finish is just is kind of wasteful. So our architecture is perfectly designed to sort of be stateless, to go and call the large language model, get the response back, and then continue to sort of process the rest of the workflow.
Wow, interesting. A lot of details there. To kind of abstract it and get a sense of it all, though, I'm trying to think of you mentioned about you didn't take the approach of bundling, processes in containers, but you used a distributed serverless model. That was quite interesting. I was wondering if you could think of it, you could tell us about it in this way as well. How would you describe Merlin in the sense that if someone's familiar with using these other kind of solutions which are similar or try to do the same thing, they really love Merlin. Or, I don't know, I'm thinking, would those be traditional low-code platforms that use integrations and like rule-based workflows? People who have tried that, would they see a big improvement with Merlin, or is there some other kind of approach that people have taken that those people would really love Merlin? Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think there's a number of obviously offerings out there sort of dealing with agents and building agents, but I think there's a few different approaches. There's the low level approaches of building it yourself. There's certainly frameworks out there that can make it easier to build agents, but you still need to be an engineer. You still need to be able to sort of spin up architecture, spin up infrastructure, and sort of deploy things, ensure sort of monitoring and observability aspects that are pretty critical. So it might be quite quick to build the sort of concept of an agent, but actually productionizing that and taking that further is still pretty difficult. Then you have sort of the sort of more low code sort of agent builders, the ones that sort of make it really easy to build agents, but they're sort of focused on just building agents. And I think the problem with those platforms tends to be they're more black box. So they tend to sort of how they work. You can't really sort of necessarily delve into the underlying kind of cognitive architecture, whereas with Tray, you can do. So everything is built on the Tray platform. So the actual agent process itself is a workflow, and you can see kind of every step. You can modify it. You can sort of tweak it. So it doesn't necessarily. We're not forcing an opinionated view of how agents should work on you. We're giving you the right sort of tools to sort of build those agents. And then you also have the sort of domain specific agents, agent platforms, Agent Force, things like that, which are obviously very focused on one particular area. So Tray brings the ease of use. You don't have to worry about the infrastructure and scaling. You don't have to worry about sort of parallelizing things, threads, and all the sort of more complex programming sort of concepts. You have more sort of confidence, and you have more tools to be able to sort of delve into what the agent's doing, to debug what's going on, to be able to sort of like monitor and observe what's going on with your agent, especially when you have sort of large number of agents. I'm sure we're going to come on to sort of MCP and A2A and some of the protocols that are starting to sort of pop up. That that's going to lead to more and more agents sort of being built and sort of working together. So being able to kind of understand what's going on across your network of agents is something that we're sort of heavily sort of investing in. And then you also have the ability to cross multiple platforms. We're not limited siloed to a single platform. We have 700 plus connectors already on the platform, which means that you have many thousands of different operations that you can do across different systems in your stack.
All right. Cool. So demo time. I was wondering if you could give us a walkthrough of the dashboard of Merlin and just the key metrics and some of the cool things that Merlin does, which you already described for us in your words. But if you can really show us, what it looks like in action, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely, I certainly can. Let me share my screen. I'll give you a quick run through of Merlin Agent Builder. So,
Yep.
So
to your
this
screen.
is my Merlin Agent Builder account. So I've got this this workspace on Tray. I've got a number of different projects in this workspace. Actually, some of them are not just sort of agents, but I've started off building this this agent, and this is my agent overview page. So we define agents as sort of a few different core things. So first is the scope. So this is essentially the large language model system prompt. So this is how you kind of describe in natural language the sort of the instructions, give it a bit of sort of personality, things like that. This is just sort of a standard system prompt here, but you can certainly customize it. You then need to choose your large language model. So you can use the train native model for sort of testing and things like that, but you can also connect it to one of the many different providers out there. So we support all the sort of top providers for large language models. You can choose an authentication, and again, this is built on the standard Tray platform. We've been building authentication sort of processes for many years. So I'm going to choose just one of the Claude, maybe sort of Sonnet 3.5 v2, just as a large language model connected to that. And then we define agents as a few different things. So first is data sources. So data sources is basically grounding your agent in your company's knowledge. So this is ensuring that when it takes action, when it sort of tries to approach things, it can use your policies, you can use your sort of data. So I can easily come in and start connecting these data sources. So let's connect it to Slack, for example. I can choose an authentication. So this is my authentication here. I'm going to get it to process images as well. And I'm going to choose a Slack channel, in this case, the IT support channel. So we talked about it a bit briefly earlier. So being able to kind of listen to what's going on and read messages in the IT support channel to use that as context is incredibly important, because I can then ask it a question and it'll go, oh, I've seen this before in the channel. Someone's already sort of raised this problem, for example. And this data source, again, is a low-code workflow. So the idea is that behind the scenes, there's a load of workflows that are going and scraping, Slack, crawling Slack and scraping the data from there, including images, using some of our intelligent document processing capabilities to sort of, extract text from images and PDFs and things like that. I'm also going to add Google Drive as a data source as well, just as an example. Choose a demo drive, choose a folder. So this is going to go and crawl sort of policies and other documents. We've got security policies and stuff, and you can see that sort of going away and ingesting various different documents, and all that data is grounding the agent in that company knowledge. So I've defined my agent sort of personality. I've given it some instructions. I've now given it some sort of grounded it in some knowledge. I'm now going to give it some tools to actually take action. So it's got a couple of tools already.
A question there though, how do you tell it which, for example, within Drive, which folders it can access, which it can't? Where do you define those?
So that was in the configuration. So if I go and I can't read, I'll show you just through another example here. So once you've selected the authentication, you can define the folders that will go and sync.
Okay.
So the data sources is a brand new feature. It's literally launching in the next few weeks, and we're continuing to iterate on data sources. So the idea is that a future version of the Google Drive data source will also allow you to choose which file types, for example. So here I'm choosing a specific folder, and it's going away and it's sort of crawling through that folder, any of its subfolders for any of the documents.
Got it.
Comes that. So I'm going to go and add some tools as well. So tools are the ability for the agent to take action. So this is giving it tools to sort of contact Salesforce, or you go and create sort of application or provision applications in Okta and things like that. So I've got a couple of tools here already which are to do with the knowledge. So this allows it to find knowledge from that knowledge source. I'm going to go and add another tool from one of our templates. I'm going to choose Okta. I'm going to choose, like, for example, resetting a password. So I can use this tool. This is kind of out of the box. And again, the tools, I select an authentication. The tools themselves are just low-code workflows. So I can actually click through and, for example, this Okta tool, Okta reset password. And you can see this is a low-code workflow within Tray. I can actually go and modify it if I want to. And all it's doing is it's got a standard input schema, and it's getting the user by the input email address, and then it's going to start the reset password flow. And that's pretty much it. It's a very simple tool, but giving these low-level tools to the agent really gives it the ability to take sort of more complex, complete complex tasks. And then so it's now I've got data sources. I've got this. You can see Slack is complete. Google Drive still syncing. I've got data sources. I've got tools. I can deploy it in an interaction channel. I'll show you that in a second. We've deployed a previous one into Slack, and I can show you how it works. And then I can test it. So I can ask questions such as, what is our holiday policy? And that will go and then basically look through sort of, use the data source, use the knowledge tool to actually go and sort of, find relevant information. And one of the great things about the Tray platform is we've got a native vector storage feature built into the platform, so you can actually go and see the logs, see what it's doing. See in real time the reasoning and action, sort of, cognitive architecture going on. So you can see it's gone and searched for knowledge in our knowledge base, and it's returned a load of documents. It's going to then be summarizing that. So you can see it's summarized it. It actually links to the original source document as well. So if I open that, let me just open that. There we go. You see, oh, it's asking me to sign in. Not signed in at the moment, but you can see it pull that data back, and it's done all this sort of stuff, and all of that data is stored in this knowledge storage. We call it vector table, so it's a vector database basically. And you've got all the tools you need to build complex agents, and we have a lot of out of the blocks templates and agent accelerators as well that can get you started. So if there's a tool that you want, then most likely our community has already sort of built that tool, and you can build sort of really kind of advanced agents. And to give you another quick demo of that sort of working in, for example, Slack as an IT support channel. So I've got another agent which I built out, which is a bit more complex. So I've got got a number of different tools in this one. So you can see this one's much more built out. So I've got tools for doing things like requesting application access if it needs approval, installing applications on a computer using Jamf, MDM software, resetting to multi-factor authentication, things like that. And in this channel, I can actually go and drop images. So I can just drop this image, for example, which is an image of Okta in GitHub. Basically, I'm trying to log into GitHub, and it's not giving me access because I haven't been provisioning the application. And I'm just going to say help. And that's a common thing that we see is in IT support, especially as people just drop an image in and say, "Oh, help! I need I need some help with this." And then the agent's going to go away. It's going to extract the text from this image, understand what's going on, and then it's going to try and sort of actually support the user with this particular problem. And what we've got is we've got a data table defined locally, which basically defines some of our application policies. So it's very simple. You could store this anywhere. This could be a Google Doc, it could be Google Sheets, it could be stored in your your IDP, for example. But here I've defined some really basic policies, and I've given the agent some instructions on how to use it. So I've defined something like GitHub Cloud. The request policy is team, which basically means that you need to be in the engineering team, and you get automatic approval. Whereas something like DocuSign is either team or manager. So if you're in the finance team or executive team, you get access. But if you're not, then you need to get manager approval. And there's an owner and things like that as well. So this leads up to the agent being able to kind of automate things and take actions on your behalf. So you can see here that I see you having trouble accessing GitHub. As a member of the engineering team, you should have automatic access. It's learned that from the policies. I can help provision it. I'll say, yeah, I want you to do that for me, and it'll actually go away and provision application access to GitHub on my behalf. Through the different tools. So that's the sort of the sort of power that you can actually sort of get from building a sort of an agent, giving it low-level tools.
Oh, really interesting. I'm guessing the workflow section is where multiple agents work together, so you can create more complex processes there.
Yeah, so the idea is that you can actually call other agents using workflows themselves. So I could easily create a new tool from scratch. So I can go do custom tool. So I can maybe had another agent which was like an agent that did stuff with DevOps. And give this a bit of a description. Call the DevOps agent. And I can actually use, we have a connector that actually allows you to call other agents. So the idea is that if I go and actually open this workflow, I could kind of give it an input schema, which would probably in this case for multi-agent communication, the idea is you just give it another prompt. So you could define, we have support for A2A coming, which is sort of more natively into the agents themselves, so they can kind of discover other agents and actually sort of have a standard interface for calling them. But here I can actually just call my agent connector. So we actually have an AI agent connector here, and this actually just invokes an agent. And the idea is I can provide a prompt, session ID, things like that. And so this is how easy it is to sort of do multi-agent communication. So I could actually get this to call another agent entirely.
Oh, really cool. Oh, that's an amazing demo. I think so much is possible with Tray, with Merlin. And yeah, thanks for demoing that. It was really cool. So yeah, I saw something called composable workflows, is what, let me just check the exact term, just a second. Yeah, composable workflows, something that you talk about on the website. as something that Merlin does. What is it? I was interested to know more about that. What is composable workflow? You probably demoed it to us a bit, but kind of define it for us.
Absolutely. So I think composability has always been a big driver for us. I think from the beginning, we wanted to build a platform that was flexible and composable. So the idea is you can basically build more complex systems through a set of assembling a set of different building blocks, basically. So in the case of a workflow, it's taking the off-the-shelf connectors that we have built or our community's built. We have a connector development kit which anyone can start using to build connectors, and taking those pre-built connectors, those low-code connectors, and bringing them together into a single workflow to produce a more complex process. And just like I showed you, in the demo just a minute ago, the idea of calling multiple agents, you've got one agent that's built up of multiple tools which are themselves composable workflows, the low-code connector as building blocks. But I can then expose that agent itself as an API, as a connector in that case. And this idea of a network of agents themselves, it's composability. It's basically saying I might have an agent that is really good at DevOps, has certain sort of things you can do from a DevOps perspective. I have another one which is IT support. I have another one which is sort of we're actually building a lot of agents internally for doing things like PR code reviews and things like that, and sort of generating code, and being able to kind of compose them from sort of smaller reusable building blocks is key, and then also having them interact together.
Fascinating. So we're winding down. One of the last questions that I want to ask you is about just agents working with other agents that may not be from the same platform, and sort of the idea of interoperability or standardization of agents. Could you share some of your thoughts on that? Where are we headed? Where are we at right now in terms of standardization and interoperability between AI agents? Could you tell us a bit about what's happening there?
Sure, it's a great question. Certainly, I think it's probably the biggest sort of buzz topic at the moment. Certainly, things like MCP and A2A in the AI and agent space. So Tray as a platform is, like I said, from a flexibility perspective, our kind of API management offering supports things like service and events. It can adapt to the evolving kind of protocols that are sort of coming out. But I think standards are great. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And the key to standardization is adoption. If you've got a standard, it's great, but there's no reason for it unless it's being adopted by people. And there's a lot of weight behind MCP and A2A and some of the other sort of protocols that are suddenly being released. So it does feel like we're going in a really good direction. But they're also evolving fast. I think that's one of the key things to learn. They're evolving fast. There's lots of changes going on. We're seeing a lot of fragmentation. So our support for MCP is at the workflow level, at the API level. So we can actually build MCP servers that expose your agents tools, that expose all of our connectors through our connectivity API. And that's primarily possible because of the API management offering we have is flexible enough to support the different protocols that the different sort of standards that they've been built on. Our connectors are built using JSON schema, which is what A2A and MCP use. And we actually launched our connectivity API probably 5 years ago, which is exposing all of our connectors that we have. We have over 700 service connectors, to as an API for you to basically be able to list the connectors, list the operations that they have, and then be able to call them as well using JSON schema. So our connectivity API is essentially exactly the same as MCP. It's the same sort of protocol. It's the ability to list tools and then execute them, and it uses JSON schema as JSON and JSON schema as a sort of standard for sort of communication. So we have out of the box support for those, but the key thing is that, like I said, they're changing. Like in the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of sort of security incidents with MCP. There's a remote code execution exploit. Then I think it's in Anthropic's own MCP inspection server. So I think it's great that we're moving in the right direction, but we need to be cautious. And I think that the main thing you need to do is make sure you have systems to observe and monitor what's going on. You need to have that thing. And I think that we don't want to be putting ourselves in a position where we don't know what people are doing. Like, people are spinning up different MCP servers left, right, and center, spinning up agents and getting the communities get together, and suddenly something goes wrong and you don't know how or why it went wrong because you don't have control over their system. So that's certainly how Tray is really focusing on it. It's like we want to enable the adoption of these protocols and the different technologies, but we want to do it in a secure and safe way. Make sure that the governance is there from day one, basically.
All right. So if someone's, interested in all of this and they want to get started, what's the best way for them to dip their toes in it, and get a feel for how Merlin works and is it right for them?
Yeah, definitely. They should head to our website, Tray.ai, and click on the interactive tour link as well. That gives you a good overview of what the platform does. It's a very broad platform. It does a lot of things, but you can certainly get a good idea of what Merlin Agent Builder does, and how you build agents there as well.
Mhm. All right. With that, we come to the end of our conversation around agentic AI and Trey's approach to agentic AI as well. And hope you found it interesting. And if you did, definitely go and check out what Trey is building with Merlin, their agentic AI builder, and get in touch with them. Alistair, before we finish off, though, just one question to get to know you a bit, which we ask all of our guests on the show. What would be your alternate career path if not for your job in tech?
Oh, good question. I mean, I would like to say like I would be a professional football player, but that was never likely to happen, unfortunately. No, I think I was more likely to have been sort of graphic or product design. I think early on I was really interested in technology, but also really interested in sort of design and like I mentioned earlier, how computer human interaction and stuff. So I remember doing a lot of in my early kind of school work, product designing cars, things like that, like designing products that people use. So I think that would probably been one that satisfied my need for creative control and sort of being able to create things basically.
Design thinker. Which is your favorite EPL team?
I'm a Liverpool fan, so yeah, so pretty good year for us.
All right, neat. Great. That was fun talking to you, Alistair. Whenever you guys launch something big, remember to come back and tell us about it. We'd love to hear more about what you're doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Would love to. Thank you, Jane.
And thanks to all of our listeners and viewers for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this conversation, and we'll see you on the next one.